What are the best games for get-togethers with friends? Questrium said. Secret Hitler is a personal favorite of mine. Snake Oil is also fun if you have friends who are good at improv. Rawberry 1110 said. Absolutely. I've played Resistance for years with friends and family, we all love it. But it can sometimes be unfair. With a smaller group it's really hard for spies to not instantly out themselves. In larger groups spies are everywhere. Secret Hitler has a tiny bit of RNG with policies, so even if two liberals are in power, a fascist policy can be unavoidable. You can try to lie your ass off or convince people that you really aren't fascist. Also love that Hitler doesn't know who to trust, they just hope that the right people can get them into power. It's my all-time favorite hidden identity game. Alexander Puggleton said. Jackbox games are a lot of fun. Pretty inexpensive and easy to learn and play. As for board games, we came across a fun one called Codenames that was a lot of fun for a pretty good-sized group of people. Space Lord said. This is exactly how it goes. I always have a blast writing all sorts of wacky phrases or making drawings that can be combined with almost any phrases and it's great. Unfortunately, my wife has a hard time with that game and hates it. She says she has no idea what to draw, and just ends up drawing whatever is in the room so her drawings never get used. So yeah, TKO is extremely person-dependent, but then again so are most of those games. I personally hate the trivia games, and another friend hates the imposter kind. It's all about getting a feel for the group. Berluxia said. Yeah, it's much more fun for a new player if they're playing with someone who hasn't played before either. They develop their own systems of communication and work together better, rather than the one person who knows how to play just taking over the whole time. Did this with a few friends, and while it was hard to step back, it was much more fun to watch them play, fail, and learn on their own. Deviant 324 said. Gartic Phone is basically a game of online telephone, except you're given a random person's prompt from within your group, and you have to draw their prompt. The next person after has to figure out what the prompt was and write it out again, then it goes back to drawing and so on. You go back and forth until every person has seen every prompt, then the game does something like a supercut of how the prompt evolved, with optional text-to-speech of the written prompts. Totally worth it. First Sophie Guy said. Overcooked. You play a bunch of chefs in a kitchen who have to run around doing various tasks to prepare meals. There's always more things to be done than people who can do them, and it quickly turns into frantic shouting mayhem. It's great fun. Crimson Kodiak said. Reposting my Overcooked story. I play this game with my daughter. The first time we played head-to-head, she made the mistake of putting her fire extinguisher on the middle shelf where I could reach. I immediately noticed, grabbed it and put it over on my side. Once her kitchen started to go up in flames, I turned on the fire extinguisher and did circles in the middle of the floor while her entire kitchen burned. If that's not parenting, I don't know what is. Mandersmender said. When I have large groups of people over and many haven't met each other before, I like to play a game called Table Topics. It's based on an actual game my sis and bro-in-law had that was basically thought-provoking but non-intrusive questions printed on a deck of cards, and you would pull a card and answer whatever question you got. I don't own that deck of cards, so in the version at my house I just whip out index cards and pens and everybody writes at least 3 questions down and puts them in a bowl. Then we pass the bowl around and everybody answers a question. It's actually a really great way to get conversations started and introduce people to each other. I swear by it. Azog Thearch said. Great, I never bought a single book, a friend got the Master, Player and Monster Manuals, 3.5 the best one IMHO, so we pretty much memorized the rules and it's over than 15 years that we keep playing that awesome game. For any reference we use the D20 SRD online, it's incredibly complete. All that you need to play is pen, paper and a set of dices. If you want to overflex then just buy a second set of dices only for the Game Master to use and bring a pack of beers or some pots, but it is just my opinion. We made tons of different campaigns. Now I'm running a Fallout themed one with homebrew roulette for more realism and challenge, and it is awesome. I made tons of new friends playing and this has no price. Keep rolling guys. Dumpster Cart said. There's only I think 5 boards in total on the Switch version, 2 of which are unlocks. And yeah, winning is a lot more randomized in the version, You'll literally need to be at least 2-3 stars ahead of everyone else to confirm your win thanks to the post-game star awards, or whatever they're called. Also, at some point the game arbitrarily decides who it wants to win, and will rig itself in that player's favor to the best of its ability, even in the case of CPUs. My sister and I now have a deep loathing for Daisy, because we played 3 games in a row with her as the CPU, and every time the game chose her to win in the last 5 rounds and then just threw coins and items at her in an effort to fulfill its own prophecy. It's not nearly as bad when you've got enough players to not need CPUs, but it's still obnoxious. Also, unlike in previous versions, there's no option to simply play a 2 or 3 player game without CPUs. So you get stuck having to play a minimum 45+ minute game and just sitting through CPU turns even if you've only actually got 2 human players. It's still fun, but it's much more annoying and luck-based than previous versions. A lot less focused on the board game element, too, and what boards there are pretty lackluster. Trinix D. Morrison said, "Trial by Trolley. Basically takes the classic trolley conundrum, but instead of one person on one track and 5 people on the other track, the 2 teams play several good and bad cards to create their tracks and then argue over which would be the ethical choice. So for example, on one track you can have a 9-year-old cancer survivor, a scientist who will find the cure for AIDS, and Hitler. The other track could be a ball pit full of puppies, a friendly dragon you can ride around on, and a convicted child molester. After the 2 teams make their arguments, the conductor then chooses which track to ram through, and the team that didn't get killed get tokens. This goes on for a few rounds until one team gets 3 tokens. It's a lot of fun, but it's definitely a party game. Playing this with just a few people just doesn't work." Nambit said, "Ticket to Ride is great, but there's a surprising amount of expansions that can keep the game fresh, from simply adding more root cards, to fundamentally changing the way the game plays. From basic things like the Indian variant scoring bonus points for having your tickets connected via a loop, to the Japanese variant which adds a communal bullet train which players can build to connect routes, to the UK version which includes an upgrade mechanic before players can play routes in certain parts of the map of a certain length. There's also a completely free expansion available, though it does need printing, called Ticket to Ride. Stay at home, that might be worth a go if you want to try something different." Wisabloodfulhurt said, "One of my friends has a ton of expansions for it, but I just got burnt out on the whole concept. I do like some of their Black Friday shenanigans though. The year they did the holiday hole one, my boyfriend at the time and I found out it was less than an hour away from where we live, so we decided to stop by while we were in the area and try to find it. Sadly we were too late and it had already been filled in. BTW, you can play a clone of it online that has pretty much all the expansions and foreign versions. https://pretendier.ziz/zy/ MJ21 said, "My family and I play a game called Unstable Unicorns. It is a card game, but with some difficulty. It takes a while to learn. By the end you betray everyone. Basically there are certain types of cards you can play to your advantage and other cards you can play to other people's disadvantage. The object of the game is to get 5 or 7 unicorn cards. Depending on how many people play, you play cards in order to prevent someone else to all of their unicorn cards. It takes a while to learn how to play, but it is really enjoyable once you know." Blimp said, "A really quick card game that's a blast is Love Letter. They have a spin-off themed after the Munchkins game called Loot Letter. Another card game is Coup. Funhouse does a playthrough of it along with its expansion so you can check out how it plays by watching it. If you have a huge group of people, recommended around 6 or more, is Werewolf or its spin-off Mafia. That one can get chaotic in a good way. A game on PC or Switch is Keep Talking and No One Explodes. You do have to print off a manual or have a dedicated tablet to play though. Technically you could use your phone for the manual, but the print might be a little small. Edit. Forgot about the silly phone game called Space Team." Dumpstacot said, "For board games, it depends on what friends you're playing with and how much commitment energy you're looking to put in. If you're done for a potentially 2+ hour commitment, Betrayal at House on the Hill is an amazing game. The Game of Thrones board game is really fun too, but that's also a longer commitment and probably wouldn't be fun if you aren't already a fan of the series in some capacity. Other board games I'd highly recommend would be Dixit, Small World, or Seven Wonders. For video games, I don't have many unusual recommendations. Any of the Jackbox Party packs, but especially 3 or 7, Mario Party, Mario Kart, Super Smash Bros. Star Wars is maybe a lesser-known one that's incredibly fun's well. Golf It, Ultimate Chicken Horse, and Human Fall Flat are all super fun multiplayer games as well, although I don't know how successful they'd be in a split-screen sort of setting. Cheezer567 said, "It has different names, dictionary or fictionary. Someone narrating finds an obscure word in the dictionary and, once you've determined that no one knows the real definition, everyone writes a definition. All of the faux definitions are read along with the real one and people guess which is real. You get points for guessing right or for fooling people. It can be really funny. Doesn't work well with small groups." Brown-Eyed Squirrel said, "Secret Hitler is really fun. Everyone gets a small envelope that assigns them as liberal or fascist, and one of the fascists is also Hitler. The liberals have to stop Hitler from becoming chancellor. The catch is that only the fascists know who their teammates are, and who Hitler is, but Hitler does not know who is on their team and the liberals do not know who is on their team." Air said, "If 6 or fewer people. Betrayal, at House on the Hill, is my gaming group's all-time favorite. It's so fun and every game is totally different. The base game without the expansion has 50 different endgame scenarios alone. If you are unfamiliar, basically think of Scooby-Doo. You as players all arrive at a haunted house and explore, building the house with room tiles randomly as you discover them. Events trigger, you pick up items X and then something will trigger the end game at some point, and depending on a number of factors the book will determine someone's, or nobody is the traitor. The traitor is told to go to page X in a book and read it alone in another room while the survivors get their own objective. Then you all return to the board, things get crazy and you begin the second phase of the game. It's awesome because you are all working together and no one person can determine who is going to betray the rest, not even the eventual traitor. So fun." Teodorbit said, "Lateral thinking puzzles. Lateral thinking puzzles are strange situations in which you are given a little information and then have to find the explanation. They are solved through a dialogue between the quizmaster who sets the puzzle and the solver or solvers who try to figure out the answer. The puzzles as stated generally do not contain sufficient information for the solver to uncover the solution. So a key part of the process is the asking of questions. The questions can receive one of only 3 possible answers: yes, no, or irrelevant. Example. The man in the elevator. A man lives on the 10th floor of a building. Every day he takes the elevator to go down to the ground floor to go to work or to go shopping. When he returns he takes the elevator to the 7th floor and walks up the stairs to reach his apartment on the 10th floor. He hates walking, so why does he do it? This is probably the best known and most celebrated of all lateral thinking puzzles. It is a true classic. Although there are many possible solutions which fit the initial conditions, only the canonical answer is truly satisfying." Bifflebeck said, "Detective Club. The basic premise is as follows. Everyone has a set of cards with some abstract pictures on them. One person chooses a word, writes it down on several notepads but leaves one blank and then passes them out so that everyone except one person knows what the word is. Everyone then plays 2 picture cards that they feel could relate to the word. The word then gets revealed and people then need to explain why the 2 pictures they chose were related to the word. Afterwards everyone has to try and guess who was the person that didn't know what the word was and was just trying to bullshit their way through a plausible sounding explanation." Trongs33 said, "Maybe not a get-together per se, but my friends and I have had great fun with Gartic Phone, especially the knockoff mode since we're spread out all over North America. Basically, each person draws a picture of whatever they want, then each subsequent person with rapidly decreasing time has to redraw that from memory. After each round, a new person has to redraw that slightly more scuffed version, and so on. It's hilarious seeing the somewhat nicely drawn pictures devolve, and it's made better by the fact that we have a few people flexing their drawing tablets, drawing a not insignificant amount of name cursing as some unlucky soul gets their elaborate picture." Clyde R. Shrunk said, "Flunky Ball. For those who don't know it. 2 teams, set on drawn lines about 10 meters apart. You put an empty plastic bottle in the middle and every player gets a beer. Then you take turns throwing a ball at the empty bottle. If your team hits, your team is allowed to drink the beer until the opposite team was able to stand the bottle back up, grab the ball and run back behind their line. This goes back and forth until every player of one side finish their beer, which is then the winning team. There's all sorts of different variations. We usually set the losing team to chug an extra beer. Then there's stuff like penalties for drinking too long or without having hit the bottle and stuff. Best game ever for festivals, barbecues, garden parties, etc. Fuck your beer pong pussy game.